Hi, this is Jeff from the INTJ equation, and today I'm joined by Peter, an INFJ. Peter, would you like to tell the people a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Peter. I'm a soon to be 30-year-old INFJ male. I work as a school teacher. And Hi.
Yeah, so Peter, we just released a podcast. Well, I just released it today, but when this podcast comes out, it'll probably at least be a month from now or so because I have some others to get out beforehand. Anita, and you guys are together, right?
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yes.
So yeah,
Uh,
you could almost imagine from the background.
yeah, just cut you out and put her in, and vice versa.
Yeah.
All right. So you're an INFJ male. So you're somebody who's rarer than I am. How is it like being an INFJ, especially in Scandinavia?
Well, it's not always easy. Again, Denmark is, in my opinion, a pretty STJ country, right? It's very SITE heavy, which is not really conducive to INFJs. And there's also the male aspect is basically, it can be complicated, right? Because we don't necessarily fit with the typical male stereotype.
Yeah.
So growing up, there's some conflicts you go through because again, it it's in my nature to basically try and fit in, the FE parent thing, and it it kind of means that growing up, especially as a teenager, there is a lot of suppressing parts of myself to basically fit with the expectations of society. And it means basically having practiced a lot of TI, because again, there's a general expectation of the male stereotype to be a thinker. Um, so I was very introverted because it basically made me go into the NITI loop, right? To get at that thinking function. And it also meant suppressing feeling, or at least the expression of feeling, to again fit in. And yeah, again, it creates some tension. I suppose it basically makes for a lot of experience with my shadow. It means that I have a lot of experience with my loop. um, it's I think it made me stronger in the end, but it was not an easy experience, could say it like that, right? I've learned a lot from it, because again, I was forced to figure a lot of these things out quite early. uh,
Yeah, that's pretty similar here, maybe even more so, just like the machismo we have here and just being like, put your feelings aside. I think I guess an INTJ male would definitely have that easier in that respect because we don't really have to worry about emotion so much, but we don't really get the chance to develop our FI. Do you know any other INFJs? Have you ever met any throughout life, or maybe some of your students or anything like that?
I have. Yeah, not a lot though, but I actually have met a few. I generally, we don't stick around in each other's lives. I think it's often very much a mentor relationship when you meet another INFJ. Either you become the mentor or the mentee, right? It's very rare for an equal relationship between INFJs, I think, because we want to either teach or be taught. I don't know. It's at least with each other. Uh, I have some theories about basically how that works with how rare we are and how we fit into the social structures. Because again, in a village, you wouldn't meet more than one, right? And if a new one would grow up, it either took over the spot of the INFJ or it would move to somewhere else, right? Wander, I suppose. I don't know. It's we don't. I haven't found it easy to function like that. I don't have INFJ friends, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Usually people of your same type, you don't typically get along with well, unless you're like STPs. STPs, they kind of just all hang around each other and they really don't grow or benefit much from that. They just kind of get in trouble, it seems like, and stay as emotionally immature as they are at that time. Not that all, STPs are emotionally immature, but they just kind of like to stay and party and just kind of be in the moment and ignore the future. Speaking of the future, how does your NI work? How does it compare to an INTJ, would you say?
Well, my NI works mostly with my TI, right? The introverted functions. So it very much works with basically, I have this mental superstructure of information, right? I've basically built an internal logic using an NI as a lens, right? So my NITI loop basically has this structure that I've built up with coherency, and it has to be precise. And I can basically, at this point, it's gotten to a size where you can throw things at it, and if it fits, it generally means it's true. And if it doesn't fit, right, if it falls off, it basically means it's not consistent with what I already learned. So basically, it kind of finds the metadata, right? It's a lot about observing the systems of information and putting them together, right? And it's a lot about the human existence, right? It's generally again, I don't have FI, right? It's deep in the stack. I have the critical parent FI, which means that I don't really naturally understand myself or my position in life or my values. So it's a lot of it is actually rationalization using the metadata from observing myself with my NI and observing other people, and then it becomes a TI structure to explain the human condition. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of INFJs really struggle with. I was talking to this INFJ lady that I work with, and she's just always like, she's a therapist. I'm like, am I doing a good job? Am I making a difference? Am I helping people? And she's just always beating herself up and very critical of her own self-value and her own feelings and her self-worth. So
the FI critical parent is brutal, right? It just tells you you're shit, right? And just knocks you down. And again, the way out of it, I found, is to basically have this logical structure that you can confirm things against, right? And believe in it. It's essentially actually a pretty cold calculation, right? It's and then we always weigh it up with, when we are with other people, we use the FE, right? So we see the what's fair, what is a fair social transaction, how does other people feel, how does things make other people feel, and we kind of keep things balanced, right? It's a lot about fairness. But when we're alone, it's very much an introverted NITI. So I think that's also what's tricky sometimes with INFJs, because when we are with people, we seem very extroverted.
Yeah.
But our self-perception is very much introverted, because when we sit by ourselves, we are, cold and calculating. We don't actually consider feelings very often. Doesn't make sense. We mostly feel feelings when we're with people, because we feel their feelings. Which also makes us want to build harmony and fairness in society around us.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because like my TE is my parent function, and I could exercise my TE alone. I could read, I could watch videos. So that would probably be pretty hard. But I know, like, I was dating this INFJ girl, and I guess she would watch like sappy romance movies because she liked to feel the emotions that she was getting from those movies, and I just didn't, understand it because I have FE trickster. So I guess there is ways you could exercise your FE alone, but I imagine it's not very stereotypical or socially accepted for males to watch romance movies. So
no, I guess we can still have some enjoyment doing so alone, right? But it would be to familiarize yourself with the spectrum of feeling, right? Because again, we can't just sit down and and feel it. It's very difficult. We can essentially feel things, of course, everyone does. But our FI, it really feels like this abyss, right? It's this dark hole of we can't really see what's happening, and sometimes it spews things at us, right? And it's very difficult to figure out. And it's much easier to see what's happening when you have the FE data, because you've seen it somewhere else, and then you can recognize, okay, so that's probably what's happening to me, and it becomes this rationalization where you're kind of linking what other people have felt in a similar situation with, okay, so this happened to me and I'm feeling this weird feeling, it's probably because of this, or that's why, right? Or maybe it will help if I do this and this, right? So we kind of try and figure out how to deal with our feelings by almost experimenting. It's yeah, and then we learn what works with a specific weird feeling, and then that's kind of, yeah, it becomes an experience-based way of figuring out the FI and how it works.
Yeah. So like this is something that's just really foreign to me, and I talk to INFJs and try to like really pick their brains about this concept. How does like your NI and your FE kind of combo or stack if you're out like teaching in a classroom and I don't know, or just out socializing in general? How does that work? You just kind of like envision like a utopia for people where you want to strive to make like harmony for everybody?
No. Well, if that's kind of basically, it's a bigger thing, right? Because NI is essentially a perception function, right? It's a perceiving function. So it's the idea that we basically perceive the general abstract data in the room, right? So we have the FE data seen with NI. So we see the room as a whole, right? We see the group as a whole, and we kind of imagine where we could bring it, which experience we could give it if we use our SE, right? So it's kind of, how could we give an experience to this group that goes in a direction that is generally beneficial? Does that make sense? So it becomes, our NI is again, it's a future-oriented perception function. So we perceive, again, the abstract data. So a lot of details, but we don't see them as details, as you could probably imagine, because you can also use NIs. You see, again, the abstract combination rather than the singular details, unless you're in SE, right? But it's all about using the FE data when it's with people. So it is, yeah, it's a bit difficult to explain, but I think that it makes sense, because it's a lot about how the group could move, how could society move, how could you, what is the stimulus that is, how could you kind of poke it, right? You could talk about social constructions, right? Social constructionism, what's called. Do you know what I mean? Have you heard about that?
Social constructionism, you said?
Yeah, I don't know if that's the right word for it. Basically, you have social constructs, like these abstract structures that don't really exist, but it's like emergent behavior. Does that make sense? Between people. So it's this whole, there's these unspoken contracts and ways we interact with each other, and basically the fact that we follow laws even though no one is enforcing them to us and stuff like that. It's basically, it's big social structures built over time with tradition and everything, right? But we kind of perceive those. That's actually the FE and I, right? It's we see these structures quite vividly, and we can see how to manipulate them, if I could say that. You could basically, yeah, you can see them, so you can also push them a bit, right? You can, yeah, so that makes those microtransactions that are mostly unconscious for most people becomes something we can nudge, if that makes sense, for a group.
Yeah. Can you excuse me 1 second? My alarm is going off and that's driving me nuts. I'll have to edit this out.
Sure, yeah.
Oh, to my pocket. It might show up on the video, but that's okay. Yeah, so it's kind of like how, I don't know if you're real familiar with Jung's work, but like the collective unconscious, kind of like we have all these,
Very much so, yeah.
yeah, just like the social constructs and kind of like just they're just these norms that we just built over, I guess, the generations that we have, and just kind of like social constraints, like, oh, we got to go outside and wear clothes, you know, but even though
Yeah.
we're born naked and we, you know, just
Yeah.
kind of like,
Exactly. Those things are very, very visible to us. That's the NIFE combo, actually. That's what it does, right? Very visible, and we can see how malleable they are, right? How could they change? And that means, as for a group, you could basically, if you're a group of people, let's say I'm in my classroom, for example, I can kind of get a feeling of the, you know, the general atmosphere and how to kind of how would people react if I said this, right? It's kind of predictions of the group with the NI, right? So I can predict if I take this action, it will lead the group towards this or this outcome. So it's very powerful in the classroom. The thing is, though, that as an INFJ, we generally don't like taking a lot of responsibility for it, right? We like kind of enforcing fairness. We don't like kind of upsetting the balance. That makes sense. So we don't. I mean, that's also why we do nudging, right? A little bit, right, here and there, and preferably invisible, right? We don't like being seen doing it. So that's kind of a thing you have to get over as a teacher to do more direct impact.
okay, I know there's like a theory of like cognitive transitioning and things like that. I don't know if you're too familiar with it, but one of the things is that
Four sides of the mind, or yeah,
I'm sorry.
the four sides of the mind, or what are you?
Yeah, there's different theories, 3 sides, 4 sides. Even people say that we're all 16, but maybe we're all 16 wouldn't we kind of all be the same? But I guess maybe in like a different order would be the 16. But yeah, like INFJs aspire to be ESTPs in a sense, and they want like a following to follow them. Is that what kind of prompted you to become like a school teacher? Like you just wanted like your own pupils?
I wouldn't say that's why I decided to become a school teacher. I would say that why I chose to become a school teacher, if start there, is basically because I wanted to, there's multiple things to it, right? First of all, my perception of society as a whole decided that the most good I could do for mankind was to become a teacher, because that is what we need. We need to have the youth educated to go the right direction, because the world is going in the wrong direction. So that was a part of it, right? That's the mission part of it. Then there's also the personal aspect of it, which is that I wanted to basically practice my use of FESE, right? I basically wanted to be more confident around people, learn to use my extroverted loop better, right? So it's also a growth project for me to basically, yeah, practice using my SE, taking responsibility for things and doing things, right? Because again, I've spent a lot of time in my head, right, doing the whole NITI, thinking out, this would be the right answer, then not doing it. Does that make sense? Because we basically see a lot of information, keep absorbing more information, come up with a more complex structure of logic and systems, and this would be the right way to do it, this could be a good thing to do, this could be good, but not doing it. So basically enforcing on myself to basically use my SE, use my my FE to actually enforce change, to actually try and bring some of the things I have into the world. It was a good place to do it, and there's a lot of good energies and a lot of challenge in basically working with this age group that I'm working with, 13 to 16. It's basically teenagers, right? It's a very chaotic time for them, and I can make a huge difference. And it also teaches me a lot. Also because, again, the NI generally doesn't like unpredictability, but it can handle it if you practice, right? So it's basically practice in becoming like a chaos pilot, say, because that is essentially what it is to teach children in that age group. That is being a chaos pilot. When it comes to the transitions, I suppose you could say that it is basically trying to practice my ESTP side, also my ENFP side, to be honest. And at times even my ISTJ side. There's a lot of bureaucracy in my job that I generally don't enjoy, but it's good practice, right? It's basically trying to be more well-rounded. It's a more holistic approach to basically trying to shore up my weaknesses.
That
But
actually,
yeah,
yeah, that actually leads in my next question. Like, what is something you've done to develop your SC? I mean, being a school teacher, standing up in front of people and talking, giving presentations is definitely a good way to develop your SC. Have you thought of any other ways that you've done it, like art or sports or anything like that?
yeah. Well, I did a lot of different activities as a child. When my parents made me, basically, I was a scout. I also went to gymnastics. That was very good for my motorics as well. I actually also was horseback riding for a few years. That's interesting. It kind of went against the whole male stereotype again, but you know, I recently started carving wooden figurines actually during Corona. So basically, I've started drawing, but again, I trying to basically get some of the symbology and the imagery that I have in my head. Again, I don't think much in terms of words. It's more symbols, and it's a bit abstract. Let's say like that, right? It's the inner abstraction, and basically drawing it and then refining it is has been a good practice as well. Fine motorics. I always had a lot of small skills. I played a lot of computer games growing up as well, especially shooters. Practicing my aim, my reflexes is a lot of SE as well. I didn't start out good at it, but I've been practicing my SE a lot.
Yeah,
It's
so
also in bad ways. I started smoking when I was 18. So I only recently stopped, right? It's I think that's a trap for SC inferiors in general. If you start hanging out with other smokers, it's easy to get caught in.
yeah, my SE indulgence is food. I just have a hard time like with eating. I overeat a lot, so that's just something that I really struggle with. Kind of get those impulsive vices. Like people say, like it's impossible for INTJs to be impulsive. I think that's just a bunch of bullshit. We can definitely be very impulsive because we're just very wanty, and with our SE inferior, we can break really easy with habits and stuff like that, especially around other like SE users who are just acting
Yeah.
irresponsible or
Oh yeah, we very quickly get caught up in. I think the SE inferior gets caught up very quickly with the SE heroes or parents who act irresponsibly. We can kind of go along with it. I had some SE users in the when I went to high school that I hung out with, and yeah, it ended up with me smoking because they did, right? And that's easy to do for me because an SI demon means I don't really realize how it makes my body feel, right? It's just, yeah, and it's cool, right? SE is cool. It looks cool. You want to do things like that, right? It's see something cool. I learned basically I taught myself to do the Melbourne shuffle because it's looked cool to be able to do something like that, right?
yeah.
Practice it for a while, right? Stuff like that. Small skills that are essentially useless, but it looks cool. So you try it and like, yeah, don't necessarily master it, but it's interesting.
Yeah, I think growing up, I had more ESTP friends than any other type, so that does make a lot of sense. So you talked about some of your hobbies and interests, like the woodworking and drawing and computer games. So what, you have any past experiences with INTJs? Have you ever run into any maybe INTJ students or anything like that?
Yeah, but I don't have a lot of experience with them as students. Again, they are also pretty rare. I have had a few, but again, at the time I get them, they're not that developed, right? They're only just hitting their parent function is maturing a little bit, right? It's it's difficult with children at that age to really know what type they are. But I have a theory that there's a few. I went to university before I became a school teacher. I was studying math actually, and I was in a study group with an INTJ, just me and her basically, a female INTJ, pretty rare as well. It's interesting. But yeah, so I do have some experience with INTJs. One of my very good friends actually is an INTJ I met last year on Reddit as well, from Poland. So yeah, I generally get along with INTJs very, very well. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't really ran into INFJs. I'm sure I have. I just didn't really know much about like the typology and stuff like that until recently. They're definitely an intriguing bunch, but we definitely have some ebbs and flows, and some things that are good and some bads as far as like compatibility wise. But yeah, definitely
It's also a
INFJs.
lot about maturity, I think,
Yeah,
and what functions we prioritize. Again, even if we're the same type, we can still differ a lot, especially the intuitives, I think. But I don't know.
yeah. That's why I like to think of it as there's 16 personality types, but there's like 7.5 billion personalities. Everybody's going to be different, and
Oh, yeah.
everybody's going to be the same.
You can be more or less introverted, more or less a thinker, more or less a feeler, right? It's not that linear or simple to just. It's not dichotomies, right? It's not. It's a scale, and I think one of the things that really helps in my interaction with INTJs is again my very mature TI. I think I've had the experience that INTJs really like bouncing off their ideas on me, because again I have that internal abstract TI and I structure that basically when the INTJ throws a TE at me, I can basically fact check it like this, right? Instead of them having to use their own TI.
Yeah.
So it becomes a very fluid work relationship, or something that for research, talking about intuitive things, you can just throw out things and I'll be like, have you considered, what about this, right? Doesn't sound entirely right. Yeah, stuff like that, right?
Yeah, I don't know if you watched the podcast or any of the videos I did with Millie. She's the Finnish INFJ. I'm always bouncing ideas off her, and I really appreciate her FE and her TI, because like, am I being too intrusive here? Am I being rude? Am I, it's like turning people off with my lack of FE? I definitely want to talk a little bit more about the shadow. You talked quite a bit about FI critic, but how about TE trickster? How's that like being in an STJ world where TE is kind of like expected of you?
It can be difficult, right? Basically, it can trigger me quite bad, especially when I was younger. I have the honor of having a ISTJ mom, so that was very interesting sometimes, because that's my super ego, right? And I'm her super ego, so that makes for sometimes some interesting discussions. And the few times where I've really, again, as an INFJ, you sometimes kind of don't see the point of, again, both traditions with the SI, but also the structures, the system being inhumane or unfair. Does that make sense? And my run-ins with especially ESTJs has been explosive, let's say like that, because they really trigger me, and I do have a temperament, so it just escalates because it kind of goes against each other. So I think the things that really infuriate me is generally TE, right? I've had to learn how to deal with it, but if no one rationalizes it to me in a TI way, if it doesn't make sense why, or yeah, from an efficiency standpoint as well, something you have to come with some kind of argument that I can accept, because just saying it's that like that because I said so, that can trigger the hell out of me, right? It's like, well, I'm not going to respect that because I have to see it within myself, or just doesn't connect, right? It just bounces off, right? Just don't care. So I guess that's the TE tricksters, basically pure TE just bounces off, just doesn't stick at all. I have to basically connect it with TI or have some kind of explanation or something. Otherwise, it does. I don't respect it. I don't hear it. I don't follow it. Which doesn't, of course, work in a TE world. So having to have a job and pay my bills, and again, I could find reasons for it, but sometimes I really had to sit down with my NITI loop and really say, okay, I have to accept this, but why? And I had to basically connect the dots myself. So basically, why would someone make this TE system? Why did it survive? Well, there is a reason. There is logic to it. It's not perfect, but it is actually a reasonable choice of way of doing it. But it takes me a while. I need to process it.
Yeah, I definitely got to agree with you being triggered by ESTJs. I don't want to use this channel or this to trash any types, but it's just natural that we're going to have incompatibilities and disagreements. But I think the aspect of them just trying to control me really triggers my NI. Like I just need my freedom, especially like when I'm at work or something and the ESTJ is trying to tell me to micromanage me and tell me how to do something. Like just trust me, train me, show me what you want to do, tell me what you want me to do, then I'll find a way. Usually I'll find a better way to do it because that's just kind of how my TE works, finding a efficient path and just kind of like beating like, because they're just so about like what worked in the past, not what working now or what's going to work in the future, what's worked in the past. And that's just kind of like what we share with our SI demon, just kind of like, okay, this is like just the tradition for the sake of tradition is just a ridiculous notion, I think.
Again, they're very, very good at keeping status quo, keeping things going, keeping things working. But both the INTJ and the INFJ type basically want to develop, right? And that requires an element of trust. It requires an element of autonomy. We need to be let free, right? We want this freedom to adjust just tiny things here and there. Just let me show you it works, right? And sometimes the system doesn't have that room to work with. And that again, that's where I, as an INFJ with TE Trickster, I generally blow open the box, right? I'll just do it anyways, and then I'll prove it works. And
Yeah.
but it's difficult because it goes against my FE because I know it will upset them, right? So it kind of puts me in a bind. It's really difficult to figure out because it kind of puts me, I want to do this, but I don't feel like it's going to be comfortable doing so. And then I'm stuck in that. It can easily get me looping. And that basically makes me transition into a more explosive ESTP or even the ISTJ superego blowing things up, right? Which is usually not very constructive. So I have to learn to breathe and actually argue my case using some kind of what could you say? Basically, I estimate a variation of TE, right? I don't really use TE myself, but I can use my TI to kind of look like TE, if that makes sense. Also from practice arguing with my mom and other TE users, at some point you figure out how to say things in a way that they will accept them. Have to just find sources that is not me saying the same thing that I want to say, right? So I sometimes go into these researching sprees. If someone tries to control me with TE, I basically go researching for some kind of, again, basically a bias, right? I'm looking for someone who's going to say what I already think. So instead of saying what I think and know to be true within myself, I find someone else saying the same. And then I use that TE to argue my case instead of using myself, because I know they don't respect that. Because me saying, well, this is the truth, they don't believe that because I don't have the TE credentials to say so.
Yeah.
Even though I know it's truth. So I just find someone else, because if it is truth, someone else will have said it. That's kind of the realization I made, right? So just find someone who said it, find 2 or 3 people who did, like, here's the sources, boom, here you go.
Yeah. It's like a really ignorant way of like TE things, like a TE users do. It's just like, oh, he doesn't have the 3 letters behind his name, or he doesn't have that $75,000 piece of paper hanging on his wall in a $20 frame.
Yeah.
You know? Just that's
Being
definitely the
an
ignorance of.
autodidact is a very difficult in a TE world, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think like INTJs, they could kind of go either way. They can be like, okay, well, because I like on the Discord server, which I'll put in a link down below, they're just like a lot of INTJs that argue with like, what's your source? What's your source? Like, like you can kind of come up with your own opinion and theory, and it can definitely be true. Like the thing with NI, we don't really have a high TI, but with our NI is just like we imagine things that aren't true yet, that haven't happened yet, and that we can create. We kind of just theorize and make possibilities and kind of bring it out into the world, just because it's not true yet, it's true to us and we can make it true.
And reality is generally subjective to everyone, right? No one actually can say something is objectively truth until you see it. But still, even when you see it, what is seeing except for neurons firing in your brain, right? It's all internal. It's yeah. So I definitely agree. And with NI, you easily see abstract combinations of things, of data that might not have been seen before. That doesn't mean that the things going into it or what's coming out of it doesn't exist or could exist or will work. One way to find out is to let us try, right?
Yeah, just give us the wiggle room, and we'll make it happen one way or another. We'll probably even do it better in a lot of senses. Yeah, but I can definitely resonate like how you try to use your TI to compensate for your TE, because I have to definitely use my FI to try to compensate with my lack of FE. I just can't really like pick up on people's emotions and empathize with them, and I have to kind of just put myself in their situation, their shoes, and feel what I would feel if I were in that situation. It's a lot slower and a lot harder for me to do, and it's a struggle for me to with people. But yeah, or I have to figure out what TE and find a system like typology. This is what I have to navigate to function in a world. Basically, I have to learn like their type, and like, okay, this is gonna piss somebody off because they're an ISTP or something. If I say this wrong, then they're probably going to get mad and even maybe swing at me because they're a high SE user or something.
It gives you a shortcut to basically rationalize faster, I guess. So it's like instead of having to go through the whole, well, if I was exactly this person, I wonder, so then I would have this life situation and this and this and this. You can basically jump into the MBTI structure and go from there, because it already gives you at least some attitude to things. I could imagine that being very helpful in again trying to see how they would see it.
Yeah, for sure. All right, what else we got? So what about like your any nemesis? Can you describe your experiences with any nemesis a little bit?
Yeah, well, it's difficult for me to really pinpoint exactly when it happens. In general, I feel like the any nemesis is again, I have strong intuition in general, right? So again, the any is also pretty strong when I need to use it. I really got a lot of practice with it in university. I think when it really hits me as a nemesis function is in, I suppose, a relationship with another person where I essentially I think it comes back to the one of the virtues for me is loyalty, right? Especially in relationships. So I really value people being loyal, but my NE sometimes, especially if my NI kind of gets blindsided, if someone is acting unpredictably or with, outside the framework that I expect them to work within. It happened more when I was younger, right? Because again, the more experience I get, the better I get at predicting, or at least widening the frame for the interactions I'm expecting. Again, people are inherently not very predictable, but as a system, systems can also be unpredictable. Basically, chaotic systems also are systems, right? And people are essentially chaotic systems. But if something goes way beyond what I expect, then my NI kind of gets a little bit triggered, in the sense that then it triggers my NE, and I'm like, why? What could be the reasons they do this? What are the possibilities? Does that make sense? That's when the NE kind of tries to go wider and like, okay, what could be the data point I'm missing that would make this make sense? And then it can come to some kind of off conclusion. Maybe often what happens in relationship is that it would come to a conclusion that they might be disloyal in some way. Maybe they broke some kind of promise that I expected them to hold. Does that make sense? Something like that. And then you can actually get into a situation where it's something INFJs do sometimes, and we have to catch ourselves to not do it. It's basically loyalty testing people. Which means that we might go like, okay, so let's say someday, I think the easiest would be to use basically a relationship, a partner relationship. Your partner comes home an hour later than they usually do. Let's say that. I think that's a general, that happened for INFJs before, right? Like, what would they be doing? They don't want to tell you. Why did they come home? They don't want to tell you. Okay, then you start speculating. Okay, why could they do that? Well, then you speculate. Okay, maybe they are not being faithful, or something, right? You basically jump to stupid conclusions because again, it's a nemesis function. And then you might loyalty test them by simply following them the following time they're doing something like that. Doesn't make sense. It's really silly. And then it shows that actually what happened was that they were out buying you a gift.
Yeah.
You know, so basically it breaks trust if you do something like that. So we have to catch ourselves not being stupid with our NE, because we're not that good at using it.
Yeah.
We can kind of jump too far out conclusions.
It definitely works and kicks us in the butt for sure. Like, I think that's just what the problem with INTJs have. Like you said, like NI wants kind of predictability, like how we're going to foresee things, but we can't really control people's free will because we don't have that high NE. And even like, you know, to an extent, they can't really control people's free wills either. And that's just why we withdraw, because we just can't really read people with our lack of FE, and we just can't control people. But with our high TE, we can control systems a little bit better. Like something might not go wrong, but we can just adjust it and figure that out. And we're getting pretty low on time, but something I was like bugging me the whole time we're talking is there's something that we're supposed to talk about. I remember Nietzsche. I don't know a whole lot about Friedrich Nietzsche. Everybody speculates he's an INTJ, but you think he might be an INFJ?
Yeah. I basically read a bit about it. I think it basically comes into the fact that a lot of INFJs actually are, especially INFJ males, have a tendency of being mistyped as INTJs actually. And one of the reasons why I believe he's an INFJ is also because I'm reading his unedited notebook material. Basically, the Will to Power book is actually compiled from his notebooks after he died. So it's not actually something he edited into a book. And it gives a very interesting view in how he thought. And to me, it seems obvious that, again, that's my way of seeing it, but it seems obvious to me that his other books have been edited to fit the structure, if that makes sense, the more TE structure. So his books look more INTJ because they've been edited to do so, right? And again, with the perfectionistic tendencies, we can keep going over and over it until we know it achieves the impact on people reading it that we want to, right? Does that make sense? So again, as an INFJ at that time, he probably would do so because it's the most academic way of writing the book. Whereas his notebooks has a whole different flavor.
Yeah.
So the raw, unedited version of his thoughts give me the impression that he could definitely be an INFJ. Also, because again, if you look at the motives for the way he writes, it's a lot about trying to project humanity. It's a lot about trying to project how we as a society is going to evolve depending on the input that comes. So it's definitely NI, right? But he's not actually talking about systems. He's talking about systems of people, which is a very INFJ thing to do. So I think he could be both. I don't know which one, but I just get the feeling for me that he could definitely be an INFJ.
I think a lot of that falls into is just like, he's an old author, and he kind of like his books, he's German, right? And the book's been translated. So people translated his work, and I think probably like translating would be like a TE thing too, and they could definitely misinterpret his words, and things just get lost in translation. Like that could be a huge possibility too. But like I said, I don't know a whole lot about Nietzsche, but one thing that he's kind of most famous for is like coining the term nihilism, and that's just a huge theme amongst INTJs. Do you kind of resonate with nihilism as an INFJ?
Yeah. I see it as basically a stage I went through. Actually, it's kind of, I see the way INFJs mature as being happening in stages. There's a reason why, as the only MBTI type, we have actually 2 Reddit channels. Did you know that? We actually have an INFJ Reddit, and then we have an INFJ's over 30 channel.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So basically that comes from the fact that generally there is a pretty big divide between the types here. Within the type, depending on which maturity level you are at, and basically there's some gates you have to go through. And essentially, I think to become a truly mature INFJ, you generally go through that, going through hell and separate away. This whole very depressive state that generally isn't that much fun, that we go through in your early 20s and late teens often, sometimes all the way into the late 20s. That generally leads to some kind of nihilistic viewpoint, and then we have to kind of get back out of that, right? We basically realize that there is something beyond it, and you keep working further. So I definitely went through a nihilistic phase as well. It definitely makes sense for me that it would be something you eventually will think about, especially in the way that the world looks right now. Because again, there's so much consumption, there's so many things. It's basically the fear of missing out, right? And at some point you basically, well, if I'm gonna miss out anyways, then fuck it all, right? I'm just gonna, it's nihilism. It all doesn't matter because you don't choose what you miss and don't miss and whatever, right?
Kind of all or nothing attitude.
Yeah, basically. And that's very NI as well, I think. The all or nothing, right? Either I do this, I go to win, or I'm not gonna even try, right? Because I think it's also the performing society that comes with the SE inferior for both of us. It's either we do this and we do it to do it perfectly, right? We want to do it to win. And we can do this to make it work, or we're not even gonna try, because that would make us look silly. We're gonna feel bad, right? I don't know, at least for me, right?
Yeah. Don't half-ass anything, full ass it.
Yeah, NI. That's why NI is also sometimes translated as being willpower or will, or the power to just tunnel vision through, right? Because the moment you focus your NI on some kind of future goal, it generally just bulldoze, right? It just makes it happen. That's the only possibility left in the world, right? It's just, that's what's going to happen. You don't realize what you're sacrificing by excluding everything else.
As Hannibal Barca said, the Carthaginian general who was an INTJ, if I can't find a way, I'll make a way.
Yeah, exactly. And everything in life is sacrifice, right? It's just everything you're not doing is sacrificed. And everything worth doing takes sacrifice. And NI is essentially a power to basically more easily make sacrifice, because again, we tunnel vision. We don't actually see what we're missing, because we don't see what we're pushing apart. We make it happen. Then when we get there, we wake up and, well, okay, I lost this friendship. I might have lost my house and whatever, right? But I got there, right? We'll just make it happen. I think it's also C.S. Joseph who talks about NI heroes being the people who basically get through the most insane diseases, because like, well, I'm gonna make it happen. We also get the most weird diseases because we have very, very low SI, so we don't really realize we should go to the doctor before it's too late. But we also just power through them because it's like, well, I'm gonna go there, I'm gonna fix this.
Do or die.
Yeah, do or die, and then we do. And we don't give up until we're there.
All right. Well, we're running pretty close to an hour, so there's just a few questions I like to ask everybody. Do you have a favorite type and a least favorite type?
Well, not generally, I would say, but if I had to say something, I would say I generally really enjoy. I actually enjoy all IN people. I think all my friends are INs in some kind of way. So the intuitive introverts are definitely the ones I get along with the best, both feelers and thinkers. Again, the INFJ is in between, so we can go either way. Depends on the company. So yeah, the IN types definitely, and I think my least favorite, I would say it's probably TE heroes. This, if I had to say something, yeah, high TE. SI is also not my favorite, but I have experience with it. I can figure it out. But high TE is difficult for me,
Yeah.
especially if they are in an authority position over me. I'd say in a friendship relation, it's different, but particularly in work situations, I don't enjoy superiors with high TE.
Yeah, I kind of relate to someone with like a high FE user. Everyone says like you should get with a high FE user, like or make friends with high FE users because, but they're just like forcing you to be happy. It's just like it just doesn't work that way, you know. Can't really
Yeah.
force an INTJ to be happy just because they want to get that happiness from you, and they feel bad for not making you happy. Like smile more, you know, to joke around, like just
But
like
I guess it
trigger.
also depends on the maturity of the FE user, because um, with maturity in FE, you also realize that it's not so much about everyone being happy as it is about everyone feeling somewhat comfortable, right? And basically keeping, what do you want to have, right? And if you want to be grumpy, then that's your choice, and you should be allowed to do that, right? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, we should have our right to our own emotions and the way we feel.
Yeah, and sure, you can try and cheer people up, but don't just say cheer up. That's basically bad FE, right? You should, if I wanted to cheer up, I might make you your favorite dinner or go for a walk or whatever, right? It's something, basically figure you out. What do you actually like doing? What do generally makes you happy? Not just say be happy. That just doesn't make any sense to me.
All right. Second to last question. What would you like INTJs or any other types to understand more about you?
Basically, the fact that despite us being very good at understanding other people's feelings, we're generally not very good at understanding our own, right? We do need someone to give us what we give others. We're actually, however stoic and contained we might seem, we actually need help dealing with our feelings sometimes. It's yeah, I think a lot of people, at least from my experience, have a tendency of assuming that we have everything together from the way we present ourselves. But that is basically the SE inferior that doesn't allow us to present a less than perfect picture, right? Does that make sense? Especially with the FE, we don't like imposing. So basically, someone needs to sometimes poke us and impose, make us, you know, tell us we are allowed to impose, right? Like, we can tell what we're feeling. We can tell if we're not happy, right?
Okay. And last question. What would you like to understand more about INTJs or any other type, really?
Well, I would actually quite like to know about the child FI in INTJs, because again, I know that INTJs in general are again thinkers. I was quite fascinated I saw the podcast you did with Anita, and I was quite fascinated with your way of talking about your use of TI, and I would also like to know more about, yeah, again, your FI. How do you actually use FI to in your internal loop and your sense of self, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's a struggle because your struggle with as a high FE user is that we can't really, we're not expected to get in touch with our emotional sides as males. So I mean, it's something that's definitely important to do. We definitely, like, I feel things, but I have trouble pinpointing what I'm feeling exactly. I'm definitely aware of how I feel, but I just don't understand what I'm feeling exactly, like to pinpoint it. For me, FI is kind of like good or bad. What's good or bad? Like, how's it going to steer my NI, and how am I going to get there with my TE and my SE? So it's just like a moral guideline for me. Like, it's just like, this is good, this is evil. Like, this is what I want. Is it good to want this? Is it going to hurt people? Is it going to help people? Is it going to be devastating to people? So it's kind of like a moral compass for me, really. But when I get in my NI-FI loop, it's like, okay, I want to do this, but I don't feel like doing it, or I feel bad about myself, or I feel worthless, and I don't take any action. And the TI is, I'm just kind of really, I think a lot of it is like, we think that we're stupid. Our own thoughts are very critical of our own thoughts. So that's why we're always fact checking and asking, like, especially like TI users, like, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Then when we do kind of come up with our own idea or a concept, we're like, we check it, we recheck it, then we recheck it, then we recheck it to make sure that we're right. Because being correct is something that is important to us. But there's times where we get arrogant, or we kind of don't really have time to use our NI, and we're like in an argument or a debate, and we say something and we're just using our TE and we assume that it's true. Then that kind of tricks us in a way, like, okay, we're saying something, we think we're right, but our TI is thinking that we're actually wrong, but we think we're right. And another thing is that we get really arrogant with our thoughts. We think that we're smarter. Like, there was just some guy in his Discord server, he thinks like intelligence and being smart is just like how much money you make. And just like, because you're making money doesn't mean you're smart. I mean, like Donald Trump, he's an ENTJ, and ENTJs can be definitely brilliant, but he's just a dumbass, really. Like, when it
Do you
comes to
think
people.
Trump is an intuitive?
I do, yeah. I
Wow.
think,
Yeah. Okay.
because I think he just kind of like, this is what I want. I want to make money. I want to be president. I want to be in charge. It's all about like what he wants, and he uses T to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess the thing is, I suppose it's the opposite, right? Because if your TI tells you that you are stupid, you have to check other sources, then basically my TE basically tells me that everyone else is stupid. So it's another way of being arrogant, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because if it doesn't fit with my TI, then yeah, can as a kid, especially before we develop our FE function in the late adolescence, we can be very, very arrogant, very arrogant. It definitely looks like that from the outside. Not that we intend to be, but we're very sure of ourselves and what we know. Yeah.
I think that's where arrogance really comes from, either FI or TI, or the lack of FE or a lack of TE. It's just like, okay, I'm smarter than everybody else, or I feel like I'm better than everybody else. My morals are better than everybody else, and the way that I feel about things is superior. And that's,
Yeah.
INTJs can be insanely ignorant too.
But you don't even need to feel that way for it to look that way. I think that's the problem, right? Because if you have an eye, you will generally present yourself as being very sure of yourself.
Yeah.
It's very stoic, right? And when you come out saying completely serious in your face, going, "This is how it is," and then that could be perceived as arrogant, even if you are in doubt internally. Does that make sense? So I think we both types probably have a tendency of falling into at least being called arrogant, even if we don't feel arrogant. We also do sometimes maybe feel arrogant. There's the sometimes there's this whole superiority inferiority thing, especially with my FI critic. I know that again. I know that INFJs have a tendency of either feeling horrible about themselves or feeling like they're superior. It's like very difficult to balance, because you either drop off the one edge or the other, right? Because you kind of go, okay, I'm very tired of my FI bashing me all the time. So it basically starts telling yourself that it's okay, I'm good at this, I can do this, I'm strong, I'm clever. And then at some point it can be too much, and there's this whole almost God complex thing, right? I can do anything, right? And but that's obviously also not true. So you have to kind of balance it. But FI very quickly, if you go the other way, just flips and just says, well, you suck, everything you do is wrong, right? And you're not allowed to feel bad, it's just you being stupid, right? Not stupid in the thinking way, but basically like, yeah, you should feel bad because it's your fault, basically, is what the FI says, right?
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, we're up on an hour. I don't want to make this too long because you know, I think it's just really hard for people to listen to an hour-long video. Do you have any last questions or comments before we go?
Not particularly. It was an enjoyable talk, and I hope it's useful.
Yeah, I enjoyed the conversation too. I think it was pretty great, and it's always good to get other perspectives, and it's really nice to talk to an INFJ male and get their perspective on things too. And you definitely do come off more you know, T than F as a male, I think, compared to INFJ females.
Yeah, again,
Yeah,
it's culture or nurture, I suppose, as well. And we go through a lot of difficulties internally when we're younger, which I guess again forces us to either evolve or break, I guess you could say. But generally, NI heroes don't break, so it's just about how long it'll take us to evolve, I suppose.
all right, well, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed this content, please like, share, subscribe. We do have a Discord server and a subreddit that I did create, so we're definitely trying to get more people involved in that. So if you'd like to join it, just join the link below. Also, you can check out my website, www.intjequation.com. Thank you for going beyond the clickbait, and have a great day.